Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of 2nd Chronicles, the 7th chapter. And in here we deal with the, we saw in the 6th chapter, right, the prayer that King Solomon prayed for Israel, right, at the dedication of the temple. So this is 2nd Chronicles Chapter 7, verse 1. Now when Solomon had made an end of praying, the fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Lord Yahweh filled the house. Right, and so similarly, right, you had times where, for example, during the time period of Elijah, right, which is after this, sometime in the future, he ends up calling down fire from heaven, right, by making a request, and the Lord sends that fire down. Now, whether it was an actual ball of fire that just dropped from the sky, or maybe a laser beam from the chariots, right, that was hovering above, you know, all in all, this was a sign, right, of the Lord, his presence being there and having heard that prayer. Now, remember, in the previous chapter, it mentioned as they were sounding the trumpets and singing and praising the Lord, his presence came there, right, and filled the temple. So they were well aware that the Lord was near. So as it says here, and the glory of the Lord, actually fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Lord Yahweh filled the house. And the priests could not enter into the house of the Lord, because the glory of the Lord had filled the Lord's house. And when all the children of Israel saw how the fire came down and the glory of the Lord upon the house, they bowed themselves with their faces to the ground upon the pavement, and worshipped, and praised the Lord Yahweh, saying, For he is good, for his mercy endureth forever. And that right there is a very, very important thing, never to be taken for granted, which is the mercy of the Lord, and being gracious enough as to where truly the mercy of the Lord does endure forever. All right, because had that not been the case, we wouldn't be here. Then the king and all the people offered sacrifices before the Lord Yahweh. And King Solomon offered a sacrifice of 20 and 2,000 oxen. It's a lot of oxen. And 120,000 sheep. That is a lot of sheep. So the king and all the people dedicated the house of God. And, you know, it sounds as though this is really speaking as in, like, in conclusion, this is how much total was sacrificed, because it would be a really, heavy task to have to sacrifice all of these in one day, in a 24-hour span even, right? But as we'll read, we'll see that there wasn't just a one day that they were there doing this. And the priests waited on their offices, and the Levites also with instruments. And when you go into the word waited, I believe it's imad, right, to like stand or hold your office. So pretty much all hands were on deck at this point. The Levites also with instruments of music of the Lord, which David the king had made to praise the Lord, because his mercy endureth forever, right? That is the Lord, that is. When David praised by their ministry, and the priests sounded trumpets before them, and all Israel stood. Moreover, Solomon hallowed the middle of the court that was before the house of the Lord. For there he offered burnt offerings and the fat of the peace offerings, because the brazen altar which Solomon had made was not able to receive the burnt offerings and the meat offerings and the fat. So they had to sanctify another area in order to do more sacrifices over there, because just that one altar that was set up, though it was huge, still wasn't enough for all of the offerings there. Now, when it says that Solomon made these offerings, not in a literal sense, right? Not like physically, because that was the role of the priests, right? But when you bring an offering, yeah, the priests are physically doing the killing of the animal and the cleaning of it and the burning of it on the altar, but it's in essence, it's in your name. It's your offering. Verse 8, at that time, Solomon kept the feast 7 days, and all Israel with him, a very great congregation, from the entering in of Hamath onto the river of Egypt. And actually, let me read on to verse 9. It says here, in the 8th day, they made a solemn assembly, for they kept the dedication of the altar 7 days, and the feast 7 days. Right? Because remember, having, let me see if we can even cross-reference this. Yep. Okay, this is Leviticus 23 and 36. I think this is going into the holy day here. And I believe this is the Feast of Tabernacles here. But I was hoping to find the sanctification of the temple. Because when you go back to the book of, it's in the Torah, I forget the exact book it's in, but it goes into when the tabernacle was first built, what the Lord instructed Moses and Aaron to do in terms of actually sanctifying the items and the stuff that were actually used, and the tabernacle itself. Because after it being built, they had to actually then sanctify it via a ritual for it to be cleansed and actually for the Lord to honor those offerings made in that temple. Okay. So I would assume something similar is what's happening here in terms of actually dedicating this temple and making sure everything was in its right order for these offerings to be officiated, right, for the Lord, as well as keeping this feast here, because we know, I think this took place in the 7th month, right? Yeah, it is. In 2 Chronicles Chapter 7, verse 10. Says here, and on the 23rd day of the 7th month, he sent the people away into their tents, glad and merry in heart, for the goodness of the Lord Yahweh, or for the goodness that the Lord Yahweh had shewed unto David and to Solomon and to Israel his people. Now, when you actually go into Leviticus, where is this? 23. Yep. It says here, the 15th day, right? Leviticus 23 and 34. Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, the 15th day of this 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days, right? So for 15 onto the 15th to the 23rd, right, would be 5 days unto the 20th, additional, about 3 days unto the 23rd, which is about 8 days, right? But give or take, that covers already, plus another day, the Feast of Tabernacles. So as we read here in the as we read here in 2 Chronicles 7 and 10, the day after the end of the Feast of Tabernacles, which would be the 23rd day of that 7th month, Solomon basically sent everybody away and so on to their tents. So, I think that was the point here in Leviticus. So coming back to 2 Chronicles, so having this beautiful occasion having had happened, right? Continuing from here, verse 11. Thus Solomon finished the house of the Lord Yahweh and the king's house, and all that came into Solomon's heart to make in the house of the Lord, and in his own house he prosperously effected. So he accomplished it beautifully. And the Lord Yahweh appeared to Solomon by night, and said unto him, I have heard thy prayer, and have chosen this place to myself for an house of sacrifice. If I shut up heaven that there be no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, if my people which are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. Now mine eyes shall be open, and mine ears attent unto the prayer that is made in this place. For now have I chosen and sanctified this house, that my name may be there forever, and mine eyes and mine heart shall be there perpetually. And as for thee, if thou wilt walk before me, as David thy father walked, and do according to all that I have commanded thee, and shall observe my statutes and my judgments, then will I establish the throne of thy kingdom, according as I have covenanted with David thy father, saying, There shall not fail thee a man to be ruler in Israel. But if ye turn away, and forsake my statutes and my commandments, which I have set before you, and shall go and serve other gods, and worship them, then will I pluck them up by the roots out of my land, which I have given them. And as we've already seen, right, because we covered those chapters, the Lord did that. And fairly enough, he did warn. He warned not only King Solomon, he warned the nation. He sent the prophets telling them time and time and time again that this is what you're doing. This is what it's going to lead to. You need to stop. You need to leave. But they didn't stop, right? And so they did get plucked up, both the northern and the southern kingdom, out of that land. And even more so, right? Continuing, it says here, and this house which I have sanctified for my name will I cast out of my sight. And that's referring to the temple. And I will make it a proverb and a byword among all nations. Well, guess what? What happened when the Babylonians came? When they destroyed the walls, when they burnt the temple? Not only did Israel and the temple become a proverb and a byword, the reputation, right? And being then taken to a foreign land, being quote unquote small, insignificant among them, that was a result of the disobedience which the Lord forewarned. You know, it's not as though you didn't or we didn't know what the Lord would do. He said it plainly, but due to disobedience, this had to be the result. Verse 21. And this house, which is high, shall be an astonishment to everyone that passeth by it, so that he shall say, Why hath the Lord Yahweh done thus unto this land, and unto this house? And it shall be answered, Because they forsook the Lord, God of their fathers, which brought them forth out of the land of Egypt, and laid hold on other gods, and worshipped them, and served them. Therefore hath he brought all this evil upon them. And this is the message the Lord told Solomon, right, in that dream, in that vision, right, to say, hey, I've heard you. My part I will do, so long as you do your part. But just know that the day in which you stop and you go off and you go the other way, this is the consequence that's going to happen. Fair and simple. And that brings us to the end of the book of 2 Chronicles, the 7th chapter. So Lord willing, this is edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.